This evening we are here with Christine Novakovic. Christine is head of corporate and institutional clients, UBS. She's here this evening to meet with a group of our MBA students in the Leadership Series. Christine has a long career in the banking sector. She graduated at Bocconi at the beginning of the 90s, and she has experienced for quite a long time the massive transformation that the banking sector has experienced in the past few years. My first question then comes very naturally, Christine. Based on your experience, you went through more than 25 years of experience in the banking sector, and probably you have seen many things changed in this sector. If you can comment a little bit and summarize, in your opinion, what has been the driving forces of the change?
Well, if you put the question like this, you make me feel old. But yes, you're right. It's more than 25 years. And I don't think there's any sector that has undergone as many changes probably as the financial institutions in the past 20 years. If you think back a little bit in the beginning of the 90s when I started, we still had the Italian lira and the French franc and the various currencies. We have undergone since then a number of crises. And honestly, with each crisis, we had some new regulations. We had some new facts that we learned about how financial instruments behave when the environment changes, when the market players change, when interest rates change. And so we, first of all, as players in the market, we learned a lot about derivatives. We started also to embrace the fact that we needed some new regulations around derivatives. And then you have not only purely from a regulatory perspective, but also from a macroeconomic perspective, if you think a little bit how globalization today is interconnecting, be it sectors, be it countries, be it leaders, so much different than what it used to be 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Today, if you are a leader in a large company, you need to basically know what's going on around the world, whereas 20 years ago it was enough to know what's going on in your country. The other big thing that changed, I would say, is technology. Mm-hmm. Technology is a big driving force of change within financial industry. When I think back when I started, both as a trader and then as a client advisor, the way you interacted with a client was via letter, landline, and lunch. Mm-hmm. Today, there's so many more channels where you interact with a client, and the challenge here is to make sure that you kind of manage these channels and make sure that you always know through which channel your client is trying to communicate with you. So technology has not only brought efficiency, but also a totally different way in how banks communicate with clients, but also how they communicate with each other. And obviously, you need to continuously adapt.
It seems to me that, Christine, you have touched upon a very different kind of driving forces for change. You named volatility in the markets, you named new financial products, you named increased or changed regulation, technology. And so it seems to me that from a managerial point of view, exactly because many things have changed in the overall landscape, a manager in a long career has probably needs to become a little bit more resilient to this kind of changes. In your opinion, how did you adapt to this changing environment? This is personally on your side.
I think this is actually one of the biggest issue that we see with most people. You know, human beings don't like change. As we grow older, we get used to the way we think, the way we do things, the way we manage, the way we decide. And with all the changes that I talked about earlier, if you want to kind of continue to grow in your career, you need to adapt your management style, you need to adapt the way you communicate, and that is actually difficult because it forces you to question whether what you're doing today is still good enough for tomorrow, or it forces you to look back at what you did in the past and question yourself whether the same recipe that you used in the past is still valid.
Can hold true also for the future.
Exactly, and it's actually, I probably would say that is the most difficult part. I find it easier to deal with change that comes from the market than when I need to change myself and adapt myself to the environment. But quite honestly, if we look at the people that fail, it is not because they don't know their products or because they don't know their sector. It's really because they were slow in adapting, or because they were not understanding that they needed to be mentally flexible and keep an open mind and adapt themselves, not expect that the market adapts to you. And as a human beings, we just hate it to go outside our comfort zone. And I think that is the thing that you constantly need to be doing. It takes courage, it takes passion, but more importantly, it's to understand that this is the only way that you as a person, and therefore also as a leader, you can grow. Exactly. By changing, by adapting, by learning.
At the end of the day, as I said, you will be meeting in a while a group of talented people that are spending their time for 1 year here at the School of Management. And probably by looking at them, they will become the future leaders. Is there any golden rule that, looking back at your experience, you would list or you would suggest to these young colleagues of ours to look at in order to manage in the best proper way a long career ahead of them?
I'm actually really looking forward to that. Again, thank you for inviting me again.
My pleasure.
It's always a great pleasure to be here. I think we were talking about complexity earlier. We were talking about interdependencies. And quite honestly, I think if somebody today thinks that he or she can manage everything by himself or herself, it's a big mistake. That might have been possible, years ago when management styles were more directive. Today, you need to be able to count on the power of your team. You need to be able to delegate. You need to, hire strong and good people around you that you can trust and who trust you, because I really would call it's the power of teams that will make people successful. If you understand that the success of your team is your success and vice versa, it probably, shows that you need a little bit of humbleness to accept that. You need to be passionate about people, because I think the way we are going, in particular if you look at social media, sharing economy, we are really going in this direction of doing things together, moving the world together, sharing an idea, sharing a goal. It's no longer the single person that's the visionary. It's really about how can you use your team and complement your qualities and hopefully, give them energy and passion so that you move it together. But it's really a question of a combination between be humble, know where you want to go, know where you want to move, but be humble and always understand that you cannot do it on your own.
Do it on your own.
And obviously the mental flexibility we talked about earlier, extremely important.
Excellent.
Extremely important.
Christine Novakovic, thanks very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.